I don't really follow rules if they violate my constitutional rights.
Yeah.
And I think as the homeowner, you have to be, or the farm owner or the homestead owner, you have to be willing to say, no,
Right.
run
Yeah.
along.
Yeah.
And take your best shot. You're never going to get them to agree with you on your
Right.
constitutional rights.
Yeah.
They will never agree,
Yep.
because that is the goose that
As,
lays their golden eggs.
as much as you retreat, they'll move forward. And if you don't retreat, then they won't move forward.
Right. That's right. Yeah. We've seen that many times.
Hey guys, Barn Geek here. In this video, we're going to be talking with Mark Baker of Baker's Green Acres. We went up to his place about a month ago or so, and helped to build a shed that they're going to use for kind of a cabin on their property. If you don't follow Mark, I would recommend it. If you look up Anyone Can Farm on YouTube or Baker's Green Acres on YouTube, you'll be able to find their channels. I'll link them in the description. But in short, his story we kind of met through his fight against the DNR, where the DNR of Michigan was trying to tell him that he had to depopulate his pig herd, and because he was raising them on pasture, simply for that reason. And they thought they might that they might have, I don't know, confusing characteristics that may or may not relate to being feral. So it was a whole big issue, and if you guys are interested in that, there's definitely videos on his channel about all of that. Of course, a lot of that was about a decade ago. But the reason I bring that up is Mark is experienced with standing up against small tyrants in your local, local government, even up to the state level. I mean, he had a $700,000 fine handed down to him by the state attorney general, which was he never ended up paying because he fought it and he ended up winning. But if you want details with that case, check out Mark's channel. This is a very interesting conversation. I think you guys will enjoy it. We're talking about how to take this rough cut lumber and this method of building with timber framing and kind of step outside of the regular, building permit, stamped lumber, stick built, slap together system and create a more localized timber framing, traditional rough cut system that I kind of call the rough cut revolution, where small sawmill owners and homesteaders are kind of stepping away from that big box store mentality and doing stuff on their own. And the more of those things that we can do, the more independent we can become. So check out the video. It may be 2 parts because it's pretty long, but I would encourage you to watch the whole thing. It's a really good interview, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching.
This is Mark coming to you from Baker's Green Acres, and I'm joined by Aaron Esch today, aka the Barn Geek. And behind us is a building that Aaron designed, and we started building it on Tribe Day, or they started building it on Tribe Day. It got a little rained out, a little bit, a little slowed down, and we were kind of isolated from the main event too. I think that had something to do with it, but we got back after it today. Today's Thursday, Tribe Day ended on Sunday, and wanted to get a little bit more done on it. And in a conversation we had this morning, we were talking about alternative building methods. And how it's another one of those things where you can pull away from the machine. So the wood that you're looking at here was all milled by Parker Homes at Homestead Provisions, and it's Aaron's design. So can you expound on the whole notion of pulling away from the machine? Okay, and why rough cut is
superior.
Superior. Yeah. Superior.
So that's my whole
goal with the Barn Geek kind of mission at this point is to provide an avenue that circumvents that going to the lumberyard, getting your, doing a stick built frame, doing just the conventional construction, because that tends to make us less secure. So what we saw a couple of years ago, back in 2021 or whatever it was, I think it was 2021, where the lumber prices took right off. Yeah, 2021. And so what happened was that really put a freeze on the construction industry. A lot of guys didn't have work because the lumber was so expensive. Yeah. So this kind of provides a way around that system where a local sawmill, sawyer like Parker, can cut out a timber package for this. We're not reliant on shipping, from Canada or way down south. We're not relying on that system that has so many different steps where if something goes wrong, interrupts the whole process. If we're going from a local tree, to local sawmill, to a local end user, to a cabin, or a barn, or whatever you want to build, chicken coop, anything, fence for your farm, then you have a more resilient local community. So that's one of the goals of what we're doing here, building these kind of designing and these kind of structures. And another one is that being that we use timber frame construction, it's common to use rough cut material to do a farm structure or a cabin with, and that allows us to submit a set of plans to the building department that says, and building inspectors are more inclined to approve a timber frame that doesn't have stamped lumber that's produced locally and doesn't come from the lumberyard. So it provides us an avenue around that whole system as well. So
what's the difference between rough cut and stamped lumber?
Well, so rough cut would be basically a logger brings the log in from the woods to a sawmill like Parker's, and he'll purchase the logs from a local logger, and he'll just saw it on his sawmill. And a lot of times it's still wet, it's green, but it really doesn't stay wet long. And it's usually in a full dimension form. So if it's a 2-inch by 4-inch, it's a 2-inch by 4-inch board. So if it's called a 2x4, it's 2 inches by 4 inches. If it's called 2x6, it's 2 inches by 6 inches. Yeah. So, but if you go to the lumber yard, you're looking at 1.5 by 3.5, a little bit smaller dimensions.
Kind of a lot smaller.
Yeah.
Why do they still call them 2x4s if?
I'm not 100% sure. I think it had something to do with, surfacing it, and they have some sort of explanation. I never quite could understand how that goes. But the modern sawmills, the band sawmills like Parker's, even though it's rough cut, you can see that the cut is fairly smooth. I mean, it's still got a texture to it, but it really lends a unique character to the structure, being out of that rough cut material. So people seem to like it, and
What would you say the difference percentage-wise is between lumberyard wood and rough cut?
Right now it's probably about on a par. Sometimes rough cut is a little bit more. Sometimes it's a little bit less. It depends on what you're getting. Yeah. But back 2 years ago, when the prices shot up, you were paying anywhere from, golly, I think the price went up to $2.50, $3 a board foot for lumberyard lumber, and you could still get sawmill lumber for 75, 85 cents to $1 a board foot. Yeah. And the price really wasn't affected as that much when you're talking sawmill lumber. So it's really because it's a more resilient system, because it's local.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
So the whole stamping process, what's that all about? I mean, why would I want to use stamped lumber in lieu of rough cut lumber?
Well, what happened was back about 100 years ago, 150 years ago, the traditional farmer, when they built their barn, they would go out in the back 40, cut down the trees, they would hew out the beams, and build their barn. And that was a really slow process, and it wasn't a big threat to the big sawmills. But then along came steam power, and the portability of being able to saw lumber, because before then you had to either have a running river or some other source of power to cut a large amount of material. And so that made the big sawmills kind of gave them a monopoly on sawing lumber. Now along comes the steam engine and local or portable sawmills, and a farmer could just call up their neighbor that has that steam equipment. They come over and saw out the material and build their barn, and it bypasses that whole process of going to the big sawmills. And so these sawmills, they didn't like that. They wanted to corner that market. They didn't want that market to slip away. So what they did was they got together a group of them, and they formed, I think it's called the American Softwood Lumber Committee, something like that, ASLC. And they created a lumber grading stamp. So they had an approved stamp that you could only get if you were accredited by that agency. And then, so they were able to write code, and in that code they could say, you have to use lumber with our stamp. And they got around some of the regulations by, doing you had an association and on top of an association in order to kind of bury that a little bit deeper.
Yep.
So, but ultimately it goes back to the lumber barons that started the whole thing. So fast forward to, over the last 100 years, there was more and more of that, building codes being adopted at local municipalities, and people being told that they couldn't use their own lumber that they've harvested from their own land because it wasn't stamped and approved. And then now we've got a new resurgence of these portable sawmills, these big sawmills that like Parker is using, and like I have one myself. And so we're seeing a resurgence in people resawing their own lumber. And my plans are kind of a way to utilize that lumber in a package that'll create a good product.
So it almost seems like the big seed companies that say that you can't clean your seeds, you got to buy seeds from them. So a farmer would keep back some of his crop so he could plant it the next year.
Yeah.
But they don't want that. They want you going to them every single year to buy their seed.
Right. Yep.
So they did sort of the same thing. They said if you want to use this herbicide, Roundup, that you have to be licensed.
Right.
So they get you in a licensing agreement. Oh, the old licensing agreement. I see how that works.
Right.
So we're kind of working around that.
Yeah.
We're majorly working around that.
Circumventing that whole process.
Okay. So we're not going to wait around for an occupancy permit or electrical permit or any kind of permits for this. Okay.
Yeah, because you're not hooking to the grid.
No.
So
they can't hold that over me.
Right. So
Because if we were hooking to the grid, then the power company would say, well, we have to check your permits. And so they triangulate on you there. Or if I wanted to insure the building,
Yeah.
they would say, well, we've got to look at your permitting process
Right.
before we'll give you insurance. Okay.
And really with insurance, I've found that this is kind of a misnomer where people say, well, if you don't get a permit, you can't get insurance. And we've had several buildings that are still, I mean, insurance companies permit or insure agricultural buildings all the time. And in the state of Michigan, you don't need a permit by state law to build a agricultural building. So
Even if you're going to live in it?
well, it depends. If you the farmer can't live in it, but you can have your migrant workers living in
Oh, okay.
the structure. So
Okay.
yeah,
So if we were to let somebody else stay here, we'd have to get a little bit of work out of them. And
maybe, yeah,
Yeah.
maybe.
if they don't live here, they've migrated.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
So that'll work. That'll work.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we were also talking this morning about having a place for somebody to stay on your homestead is kind of a nice thing.
Yeah.
Somebody comes to visit, like I would say if this was up and running and you guys wanted to stay another day, you could just crash out here for an evening. But for the homesteader to create another source of income, a cabin like this would really be
Absolutely.
helpful.
Absolutely.
There's all these platforms now. We're kind of doing the same thing that Uber did.
Right.
Like in New York City, in order to get a medallion to drive a cab,
Yeah.
it's sort of like getting a liquor license because it's so valuable.
Right.
But then Uber comes along and just creates an app, and any guy with a car can pick people up and basically taxi them.
Right.
So we're doing the same thing. We're kind of, we're not involving the building department,
Yep.
and so they don't get a say on what kind of lumber we use or what kind of roofing we use. It's all up to us.
Right.
So our code is their code is not important to us.
Right.
We will create our own code.
Yeah. And really, the free market provides a better code than the building department could anyway. Because if you build a structure that's low quality, you're not going to keep building structures because people aren't going to hire you to build it. So if you design structures that are low quality, you're not going to keep designing structures because people aren't going to want those. And so reputation is what holds the free market accountable. So that's the thing. And I find a lot of times when you have a building permit type situation, what happens is the material goes to the lowest common denominator. So they'll use the cheapest thing that they can get away with to just get by the permit, just so they can get permit approved, and they don't care if it's quality or not, as long as it's cheap and it runs by the building inspector, they're good to go. Where somebody that doesn't have that net of being able to point to the building inspector or the building code and blame them, it's all on them, their reputation, then they're going to be more incentivized to build a better quality structure because they don't have anybody but themselves to blame.
Maybe even overbuild.
Yeah.
You'd stay in a structure like that?
Yeah.
I would too.
I'm putting my daughter's going to be living in one very similar to this. And my 1-year-old grandbaby too. So yeah, if I didn't believe in the structure, I certainly wouldn't do that. So yeah.
All right. Well, if you all need future information about this, in the link we'll put, or in the description we'll put a link for barngeek.com, or you can just go to barngeek.com and you can get all of these plans there for a really reasonable price. Once you buy the plan, it's yours. And that plan is designed so that you could take it to your local sawyer, whether you live in Missouri, say for instance, and they can saw it out of the trees that you have available to you locally, and you'd be paying your sawyer for the trees. Or you could get with Parker and he could cut it out and you can trailer it down to where you want to go,
right,
or any place you want to go.
Yeah.
So yeah, for more information, I would also check with Homestead Provisions. That's Parker and Lauren Holmes, and they saw, and they're willing to do the kit cutouts. So, any parting shots?
Well, no, I do have a couple questions for you, I think, though.
Fire away.
Yeah. So what are your plans for this structure, and what structures moving forward? What do you think you're going to do?
Well, it works with what we're doing. We conduct classes here to show people how to farm.
Yeah.
So if I have a structure here, when someone's taking a class, I can put them in there, and that way they don't have to drive into town to stay at the Holiday Inn, which a room at the Holiday Inn, I'm told, is over $200 now.
Yeah.
So we could use the building here for sure, and it would be a convenience factor. It would also be a stream of income for the farm. And every now and then we have people that come and speak and are willing to speak to a crowd of people, our friends, about different subjects. Like we had a guy last Friday that talked about tree foraging, which was really interesting, and he stayed in a hammock up in the backyard, but I would have liked to have him down here in a nice, comfortable cabin. But I could see several of these cabins throughout the property, and it would be a really nice source of income for the farm. And you know, when you push the numbers on it, income for the farm is a resource to do more stuff.
Right.
So we want to have several sources of income on the farm, and this is a really easy one.
Yeah.
I mean, this building could be paid back very quickly in under 3 months if it was rented every single day,
right,
at a fair rate.
Yeah.
So yeah, I want to build another one right away.
And you're not afraid of taking a little bit of business away from the Hiltons, or?
No. No. They don't change the bedspreads anymore, so I don't mind.
Right.
We are kind of pulling away more and more from the whole machine.
Yeah.
And when we travel, the last place I want to stay is these big hotels.
Yeah.
It's not like it used to be when I was a kid.
Right.
It's just not the same.
Well, you think about it. Would you rather wake up with traffic buzzing by your hotel room, or would you rather wake up to a low beller of a cow and the birds singing and the breeze?
Yeah.
You know, it just they can't even compete with that.
No.
So yeah, I mean, if this is a duplicatable model, so what you guys are doing here, it
sure
can inspire other people to do the same thing, and all across the country. If you know, we can really provide that alternative economy. You know,
yes.
It's not the mainstream. You know, that movie Sound of Freedom.
Yeah.
Just came out last week, and it just blew away the rest of the competition. And that's an alternative. You know, it's an indie film. It's an alternative economy, and I think it's. I mean, that's good for our country. You know, for people to be. It just increases everyone's freedom. Mm-hmm. You know, liberty that way. So.
Makes us more resilient.
Yep.
Yeah, I could even see someday having the homestead be a center of operations. If we had a building here that wasn't being used and somebody wanted to come in and set up a barber shop, why not?
Yeah.
You know,
absolutely.
if they felt they could draw enough people in giving haircuts.
Yeah.
You know, I would reckon that if you stayed downtown, a barber shop downtown would probably be a pretty expensive piece of property.
Right.
And you know, it's gotten out of hand.
It has.
Just to live in town or just to run a business in town, it's cost prohibitive
Right.
to run these businesses, and it's not like these people. It's not like people in general don't need services. They do.
Yeah.
They do need a place to stay that's comfortable.
Yep.
And
Yep.
but $300 a night at a Holiday Inn, that's a little too much.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
I think that was the number that we heard today. That he said $300. Wow.
yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy.
So maybe we'll put in an airstrip here, and we'll start our own little airline, and before you know it, we'll have our own hospital and
Yeah.
our own postal service.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, and doing a project like this will probably run some footage of us building this, because we got a lot of footage of it building over this part. But we, it really brings the community together. We had a group of people, guys and gals, that grabbed a hold of that second bent, both the second and third bent there, and just tipped them up by hand. And you'll see from the footage, we put the first bent up with the tractor, and it actually was faster with the people to put it up. So it's amazing the power of a community working together, or a family working together to accomplish a goal. So yeah, it was a really cool event.
I would add that every time we do something like this, let's say it's a class where we do a hog butchering or cow butchering, it's not easy. Once you understand it, it's doable, but it's not easy. I don't think it's ever easy. This wasn't easy to do, but everybody had fun doing it.
Yeah.
But everybody that participated in this leaves here knowing how to do things that they didn't when they showed up. And we had 5 or 6 guys helping today. They're all our people, but I've never done this before. I've never built something like this.
Yeah.
So it was really good for me.
So what do you think about doing a class and teaching
Oh,
how to do that?
I think that'd be a slam dunk. I like the sound of that, because on the next one, by the time we do the class, this one will be up and all dolled up and painted and rented out. And you'll be staying in this one when we do the next one.
Yeah. Yeah.
I could just see if there was a class going on over there at a build,
Yeah.
and the students could wander over here to see the finished product.
Yes. Yeah.
And also people that are contemplating doing this,
Yep.
it gives you an idea of how much goes into it, or it depends how you look at it. It wasn't that complex once you showed the steps. One step led to another step, led to another step.
Yeah.
And it was basic skills. Can you handle a pencil? Can you handle a tape measure, a skill saw? There wasn't any complex operations here. Of course, if you're new at it, there would be some frustrations, I suppose, but driving screws and no, it wasn't that hard.
Right.
It was not that hard.
Right. Yeah, and anything complicated, even this is too complicated, but it's just a series of steps, like you said. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you would be interested in taking a class, comment below so that we know if there's enough interest.
Yeah.
Right?
We can pick a day.
Yeah.
Have another kit cut out and have it staged, ready to go. I think it could be I would think a 2-day class. So it'd be a stay over, let people camp, and then hit it hard the next day and have the roof. Like, we could put the roofing steel on this right now.
Sure.
We're probably gonna pack it in for the day, not working too hard today. It's kind of warm out.
Yeah.
And doing a lot of thinking.
Yep.
But I think we could probably build this with a class and just able-bodied humans.
Absolutely.
2 days.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
Very exciting.
Yeah. Building resiliency through education and community. Anyone can farm, right?
Anyone can farm. Anyone can build a house.
Right.
Anyone can do it.
Anyone can build a cabin.
They make it sound like you have to be an expert
Right.
and you have to jump through a bunch of hoops, and that's part of the control grid.
Yeah.
And the control grid, in a lot of cases, is voluntary.
Yeah.
You don't have to do it.
Right.
If you say that, well, I deserve to live in a McMansion as a, you're fresh out of college and starting your first job, but I deserve to live in a McMansion, and you want to build a McMansion, well, if you're in an incorporated city, they're going to have their things that they want.
Yep.
But if you prefer to live out in the country, there are no preferred things. I mean, you just do what you want to do.
Right.
I'm sure there could be some pushback in some townships. Somebody
Yeah.
would have something to say about this. But,
Yep. Yep.
it is a constitutionally protected right to build a structure on your own property if you want to live in it. They can't stop you from doing it. They'll try, but
They'll try.
they can't stop you.
Right.
And I've already thought about that. I don't know if you have, but as we were doing this,
Yeah.
actually even before we started, I thought, let's say that somebody pulls up here,
Right.
what am I going to do?
Yeah.
What am I going to do? And I've already gone through it in my mind. I would never get in any kind of conversation
Right.
with anybody that comes and starts asking me questions.
Yeah.
I would tell them that they have to get off my property,
Yeah.
and that if they have a question, send it to this email,
Right.
right?
Yep.
And I'll get back to you
Right.
when I get around to it,
Yeah.
but I probably won't get around to it.
Yeah.
And but I'm not going to get in any kind of argument or give up any information. There is nobody, unless it's a friend, that comes here and says, gee, what are you going to do with that structure?
Yeah.
It's my business what I'm going to do with the
Right.
structure. I might put my lawnmower in there, but I might rent it out to,
Yeah.
Princess Diana. It's
Right.
up to me
Right.
as it's my property. So long as I'm not doing anything illegal, like I wouldn't say, well, that's a perfect spot for a human sacrifice. That's illegal. I
Right.
can't do that.
Right.
But if a friend wants to stay there and they want to compensate me for it,
Yeah.
that's between me and them. And there's nothing wrong with getting paid
Absolutely.
to let somebody camp on your ground. Now, we've seen occasions where townships or counties say, "Oh no, you got to get a permit for that."
Right.
And what that is they want a cut of the action,
Yeah.
and you have to tell them, "Take your best shot.
Right.
I'm not going to give you a cut of the action.
Yeah.
You don't have that authority over me. So run along." But you do everything via email, and you never deal with any of the underlings at any of these organizations.
Yeah.
You only deal with the top guy because you're the top guy,
Right.
right? And you're not required to deal with any of them. It's a private enterprise, and it's none of their business.
Yep.
It's none of their business. If we want to go question for question, and they ask me a question,
Right.
I may say that, well, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
And, I may ask them a question that's equally as outrageous as what they're asking me.
Yeah.
And like, well, when you answer my question, I might answer your question, but I might not.
Yeah.
It's my business.
Right.
So
Yeah.
we don't have to ask permission to do what is legal on our private property. The authority of the township or the county or the state or the federal, it ends where private property begins.
Right.
Unless we step out from underneath the umbrella of safety, which we step out from underneath that if we do something that is illegal against the law.
Right.
But I mean law. I don't mean any regulation or rule or anything like that.
Right.
I don't really follow rules if they violate my constitutional rights.
Yeah.
And I think as the homeowner, you have to be, or the farm owner or the homestead owner, you have to be willing to say, no,
Right.
run
Yeah.
along.
Yeah.
And take your best shot. You're never going to get them to agree with you on your
Right.
constitutional right.
Yeah.
They will never agree,
Yep.
because that is the goose
As,
that lays their golden eggs.
as much as you retreat, they'll move forward. And if you don't retreat, then they won't move forward.
That's right. We've seen that many times. And there's other avenues too. If you feel strongly about your constitutional rights, as I do when somebody that works for one of these organizations who has taken an oath to protect and defend my constitutional rights knowingly and willfully violates their oath of office.
Yeah.
They've just stepped over a threshold where me as the citizen, I'm almost duty bound to bring them to account. And that is a civil lawsuit
Right.
where you're suing them personally.
Yep.
And you can do that because they've stepped out from underneath their oath,
Yeah.
which is their term of employment.
Yeah.
So it's doable. We've worked that pretty successfully in the past. Clients.
And I know people are there's definitely bound to be people that are watching this that think, well, no, I've got to follow the rules. You know, I don't want to get fined. I don't want to have XYZ bad thing happen to me. But it really takes somebody standing and saying, this is as far as I'm willing to go,
Yeah.
and no farther. And if you're willing to do that, that is a noble effort, because that helps protect everybody else's freedoms. You know, with one guy standing can protect not only his freedoms but his neighbors around him, because he'll be an example for the rest of them.
And what do you got to lose, really?
Right.
You know, if somebody says, well, you can't do that, and you say, I'm doing it anyway.
Right.
What are they going to do? Oh, well, they might fine me. When did we give, any of these entities that we created, the township board or any of these entities that we created, when did we give them the authority to fine us?
Right. Right.
You know, they may create a document
Yeah.
and say, we're fining you this much money because you did this. But what happens if you say, well, I'm not going to pay this either?
Right.
What are they going to do then?
Right.
Are they going to throw you in debtor's prison or put you against the wall and shoot you?
I don't know.
No.
I don't know.
I mean, these entities don't have the budgets to really push their agenda.
No.
And they never know who they're dealing with, too. Like, you can take them on. They don't have qualified immunity. They try to say that they do.
Right.
But that ends when they step out from underneath the umbrella of safety that they enjoy when they respect the citizens' constitutional rights. Once they step out from that, like this is under the Fifth Amendment, what we're doing here is protected under the Fifth Amendment. My life, my liberty, and my property is protected under the due process of law. You may have some weenie from the township says, well, I don't think that's right. But they don't make law.
Right.
And so if they could access or reference a law, that would be one thing. But it's a constitutionally protected function so long as there is not a law against it.
Right.
Like human sacrifice wouldn't fly.
Right.
It would not fly.
Right.
Or drug manufacturing wouldn't fly.
Right.
Things that are truly against the law. Possession of certain things, certain explosives, certain drugs, certain weapons that are prohibited by law. In reality, if there is a law, we have all consented because we're a republic, a representative republic.
Yep.
And the people that we've elected have voted to make a law to prohibit certain things.
Yeah.
So if I elect them and they make a law, well, and I don't agree with it, then, I have a fight on my hands.
Right.
But I do have to follow the law.
Yeah.
I do have to follow. If you don't follow the law, and I mean a law like there's a law that prohibits armed robbery.
Right.
If you don't follow that, you'll know, because when they catch up to you, they will arrest you.
Right.
But if it's something like building a cabin on your land, and somebody says, well, I got a rule against that,
Yeah.
You will know that it's not a law because you will not be arrested. You'll
Right.
just receive threats and letters and stuff, and you just got to hit the press to test button, say, your move. What are you going to do next?
Right.
I'm not moving. I'm not budging. And they usually forget all about it.
Yeah. Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
They it's not worth the trouble.
It isn't.
Yeah.
And our freedom is it's either the most important thing we have, or it's one of them. Because can you imagine if you were not safe in your home, like in Mexico or Bolivia, the federales can kick your door down in the middle of the night just because they want to.
Right.
And you have no recourse.
Right.
And you can't raise a hand to them, they will kill you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're unarmed, and you are not protected by any kind of constitution.
Right.
We are, what we're doing right now is protected under the First Amendment, freedom of speech. I know those people aren't going to like it.
Right.
Tough. They'll get over it.
It's our right.
Yeah.
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 Yep.
There's stuff people say all the time that I kind of wish there was a law against it, like some of the pedophile stuff.
Yeah.
I wish, well, I guess there is a law against that, but I wish they couldn't say those things.
Right.
But they have the freedom of speech as well.
Yeah.
We have the right to
Yep.
speak out against it.
Yep. Yeah, and it's worth the risk of being a little uncomfortable, having an uncomfortable conversation with a local tyrant.
Yeah.
To protect those freedoms, and if that's all it takes to protect our freedoms, just a little bit of standing up.
Yeah.
Then that's easy. That's you're not standing toe to toe with redcoats at that situation.
No.
You're
No
just,
bayonets.
Right.
No.
Right. That's low risk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you are toe to toe with some zoning coordinator from the township, what are they going to do?
Right. Right.
If you tell them no.
Yeah.
Or you don't have to speak to them. You just tell them, put it in an email. It comes to your email box, and you just delete. And just delete. You're not required to speak to anybody. You were in elementary school. You had to go to the principal's office, but you're not now that you're an adult, just because somebody works for a township or a county. You have to speak to me. No, I don't. Watch. My mouth is closed, and it's going to stay closed. Nothing you can do.
Right.
So,
yeah.
So the whole system, the whole alternative system means you pull away from it. And I suppose if I'm really part of the machine, then they can prohibit me from going in their stores or banking or cancel me.
Right.
But if we have a parallel system, there's resilience there. If this company doesn't want to do business with me, I'll go to somebody else.
Right.
Or make my own.
Right.
All right, well, I think we've about covered everything, and somebody's tapping their watch, so.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Nope. I thank you for the opportunity to show up here and build this cabin and talk to people about what we do, and looking forward to where everything goes in the future. I'm looking forward to more people building stuff like this and stepping out of that system. So.
Agree. I appreciate your expertise and your willingness to come and help us with this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Awesome.
Sayonara.